Ryan Noble standing by on the line. I want to go. Can I go right to him right now? Let's do it. Ryan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. You know, I'm married to the former host of CNY Open House.
That's right.
You knew that.
I forgot all about. Carrie Kirkpatrick became Carrie Nobles, and she's married to the guy who does roasts.
That's what he's known
They're
for.
still talking about. They're still talking about you.
Changing my Twitter bio.
They're still talking about you, Ryan. Okay, listen. Wow. Where do we start? I'd like to start with Roy Moore. Hannity coming out yesterday. It helps when 6 or 7 sponsors say we're canceling. Hannity coming out yesterday and saying, you know what? With all this that's out here, I'm giving him 24 hours. Is this guy going to survive? And is he going to do the right thing and step down, or what do you think?
You know, I actually talked about this last night on the Anderson Cooper show, and I think that all the people in Washington and in New York, and even the conservative establishment media, all these people could complain all they want about Roy Moore, but I think at the end of the day, this decision is going to come down to the voters, of Alabama.
Yeah.
He's going to be on the ballot, even if he decides to withdraw. His name is going to be on the ballot, and he is a pretty defiant man. You know, he believes that he has done nothing wrong, and I don't see a scenario in which he steps down, even if perhaps President Trump intervenes. At the end of the day, this is a decision for the voters of Alabama, and if the voters of Alabama decide that his past discretions are not as important as what they view as important issues to take care of in Washington, there's a very good chance he wins. And then that puts Republicans in Washington in a really difficult position because do they try and expel him, which would be a dramatic step?
Boy, that would be. I'm not sure how that ends.
And I think the other point that we have to make here is that even if they expelled him, that would start another special election. He could theoretically run for the office again and win. And the idea that all these prominent leaders, and even the Sean Hannitys of the world, coming out and condemning him, that actually plays right into his campaign's
playbook.
It
does. And here's Sean Hannity,
anti-establishment. He wants these attacks. He holds that as a badge of honor.
And Hannity, who's been one that has supported him all along, let's not forget, if Hannity comes around today and says, you know what, he didn't give me the proof, I'm against him, it's still another guy from New York saying don't vote for Moore.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's, we've had a lot of reporters in Alabama the past couple of days, and there's, that is a state and a group of people that don't trust what they hear coming out of Washington and New York.
Yeah.
They don't believe it, and they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt every single time. And, I think it still stands to reason that he's got a very good chance of being elected in the middle of December.
We talked earlier about this effort for a write-in candidate, and maybe some are saying Jeff Sessions, write-in Jeff Sessions. Is it possible some people write in Jeff Sessions, some people end up sticking with Roy Moore, and the Democrat comes in and just steals the seat?
I think that is the plan.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I mean, that would be... If that were to happen...
If they do a write-in, they're giving up. Republicans are saying Democrats going to win. I think.
Exactly, because Jeff Sessions is perhaps the only name that is a big enough star and well enough known in Alabama where he could have the opportunity to win a write-in campaign. But the only way he wins a write-in campaign is if Roy Moore tells his supporters to vote for Jeff Sessions. And that ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So what you're going to have is you will have a group of Republicans who are uncomfortable with Roy Moore but do not want to elect a Democrat. They'll write in Jeff Sessions. You have all the Democrats. And keep in mind, this race is still, like Roy Moore might have like a 1 or 2 point lead. So it's a close race without throwing a write into the mix. You have the Democrats hold on to Doug Jones, and then Moore's core supporters still vote for him. That sends the Democrats to Washington. So there's no easy fix for Republicans when it comes to this. And I think there are a lot of Republicans that are kind of looking at each other and saying, you know what? Who cares if a Democrat gets elected to this seat? We cannot have this man come to Washington representing our party. It will do way more harm than good, and we need to kind of cut our losses in this.
Boy, does that sound familiar. Didn't we hear the same thing after President Trump was elected? We can't have this guy coming. We're gonna and there were Republicans that were talking about how do we stop it? And guess what? At the end of the day, they didn't. They couldn't.
Well, the comparison that I've been using, and I don't know how many New Yorkers remember this, but back in 2006, Alan Hevesi was the sitting comptroller at the time, and he got caught up in a fraud scandal that it really dropped about a month before the election. And the tack that Democrats took was to tell New Yorkers to continue to vote for Hevesi, vote for him, and then we'll force him out after he's elected.
Yeah.
Which was a dicey proposition, but it worked. He was elected, and then, ironically, the person that led his ouster was Elliot Spitzer. Obviously there's an epilogue to that story.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's not a perfect comparison because Hevesi wasn't accused of sexual crimes. It was a fraud case, and he was more of a team player than Roy Moore is. But it's similar in the fact that you have two prominent politicians on their way to being elected caught up in a huge scandal before they could be removed from the ballot.
Here's the thing that's missing out of that, though. At that time, there was no Steve Bannon really working to create anarchy. And that is what Steve Bannon is creating right now. He's the mastermind behind all of this. And I feel like when I understand Roy Moore is supposedly very bright and all of that, apparently not bright enough to cover his tracks. But you've got Bannon behind him writing the storyline here.
No, that's 100% right. In the Hevesi situation, he was an establishment Democrat. Mm-hmm. He and the charges against him, he was on the verge of facing criminal charges. It's a whole, and there was no dark arts master behind him like Steve Bannon. Here's the thing about Steve Bannon. Do you think Steve Bannon cares all that much about Roy Moore as a person? Does he care all that much about Alabamians and their representation in Congress? No. I mean, Steve Bannon thrives on the chaos and the uncertainty that this scenario creates. And he just is looking at another vote for his agenda in the Senate. I think there's a much bigger picture here. When you send somebody to the Senate, you're not just sending someone there to vote yes or no on health care.
Right.
You're sending someone there to represent you and your people, to deal with constituent service needs, to be your voice in Washington. And he's essentially telling the people of Alabama, this is who you should send because he's going to vote the way I do. And, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best tack for them.
And I think they're buying it. I got to tell you, they're buying this whole thing that this is a war on Christianity. If you vote for Roy Moore, you'll be able to say Merry Christmas again because you're not allowed to right now. I don't know if you know that. I mean, how in the hell are we buying, as a public, how do we buy into this? But they are. In Alabama, they're buying in.
Well, and we've talked about this a lot, Bill. And I do think there is a bit of burying our head in the sand for those of us that work in Washington and New York and in the Northeast about just ignoring these concerns of the people that got Donald Trump elected. That we should just dismiss them. That they're dumb hicks who don't understand the way the world works. And I think that is an incorrect assessment. And I think it's naive and wrong for us to just turn our backs on that group of people.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you have some legitimate angst here by a whole cross-section of American people who voice that angst through Donald Trump. And there's two ways to respond to it. You can call them dumb and say they don't know what they're talking about and just turn your back on them, or you can figure out where that angst comes from. Is it an economic angst? Is it a social angst? Is it being forced to deal with a changing culture and not understanding it completely? Some of those things you can address. Some of them you can't, but just to just throw your hands up and say, well, these people aren't worth our time.
Right.
We're never going to solve these problems. You're just going to continue to have this back and forth battle between these two sides, and we're never going to get anything accomplished.
All right, I want your prediction here. What are the odds that Jeff Sessions' character actually is the opening bid on SNL Saturday night?
I think it. I think that's probably it depends. The president's going to have a speech here at 3:00.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Probably some sort of Sessions more Trump combination because that's the big thing here. That's the wild card today.
Yeah, what?
Is that the president's kind of punting on this because he's on his Asia trip, and his surrogates have kind of talked about it abstractly. I mean, he's got to have some sort of a voice in this, and so I think that'll play. It's funny you mentioned that about Sessions' character. I was watching the hearing yesterday because I covered the hearing for CNN, and we were coming back from a trip. And my wife said to me, she's like, I need to look at your phone so I can see what he looks like because all I have in my head is the Saturday Night.
I got to tell you, I'm watching the same thing yesterday, and the way she has his mannerisms down, obviously she's exaggerating. My wife says that she smiles too much during it, but I'm going to tell you, watching that thing yesterday, I could not help but flash over to SNL. It's just craziest,
I
craziest
think
thing.
SNL definitely having a renaissance. That's the show's really hit the nail on the head in a lot of respects.
Yeah. All right, Ryan. Interesting. We'll see what we talk about next week. I can only wait. I can't
All right,
wait.
thanks, guys.
Okay, thank
Have
you.
a great one. Bye.
I can only wait.
I can only wait.